Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Agile Amplified, where we delve into the world of agile methodologies and project management practices. Today, we are honored to have with us a distinguished guest, Gabor Stramb, joining us from the vibrant city of Reading, United Kingdom. Gabor is not just a program manager, he's a seasoned veteran with over 15 years of invaluable experience in the field. But that's just the beginning of his impressive journey. He is the brilliant mind behind Agile Admiral, a weekly project management newsletter that has garnered a dedicated following of over 1,500 plus subscribers. His expertise doesn't stop there. Gaber's insightful articles are not only featured in renowned platforms like IIL websites and weekly newsletters, but he is also a beacon of guidance for aspiring project managers. As a PM coach, he's helped countless individuals navigate the intricacies of CAPM and PMP exams throughout his personalized one-on-one tutoring services. And here's the kicker. With over 200 success stories in just the past 2 years, Gaber's track record has been impeccable. I'm extremely honored to have Gabor join us on this show. Welcome, Gabor, to Agile Amplified.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
When I was talking to you before, the one topic that kind of resonated with me when I decided, this is going to be a podcast episode, was how do we become a project manager? What are the certifications that we should be looking out for? If at all we're going for certification options, how do we practice? How do we go about clearing those certification exams? So without any further ado, I think I'll jump into the conversation. I want to start by asking you to share with us your perspective on the importance of project management certification in today's professional landscape.
Okay, that's a very good question. And taking all the questions you mentioned, so there's a big kicker out there. And the kicker in terms of the project management career path is that many times it is we do the work first and then get certified afterwards, because the project management as a profession is still experience driven. The more years you have in this field, technically, the more competent you are on paper. That's how I like to phrase it. And since we learn to walk first in that sense, the certifications are very much like a reverse engineering about the understanding of what we do, because the certifications enables your commitment to the career path. That's how I like to calling it, which means that it gives everyone like a direction, an indication that that's what you would like to do for a long period of time. That's why the importance is in today's economy, or even 2024 and beyond 2024, is getting more and more important, because that's how we demonstrate our understanding and commitment to the career path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how does a project management career path, first of all, look in the year 2024? You talked about career path, you talked about certification being a validation for project managers, and they start with being a project manager, gain more experience, and then they do the certifications, become a better version of project managers themselves. But how is the career path for them in the year 2024? We're 20 years down the line, let's say in software engineering, at least, a relatively new field, 25 years into this industry. How has project management evolved over a period, and how is 2024 looking for new project managers?
Okay, so I see multiple questions there. Now, the first one, how you enter into the field first, is I would say 8 out of 10 people are starting as an accidental project managers, which means that you have skills which are transferable and recognized under project management and appreciated under project management, like communication style, managing stakeholders, you having certain skills around planning and making things happen. So you have that drive, for example. Those are the skills which are recognized and technically first and foremost nominating you to become a project manager in any given organization if you don't have the prior experience. So I would say that's one way of doing it, is that so you've been nominated. I would say that's how I've been, entered into this field, is that I demonstrated certain skills. My superiors, my leaders actually been considered I'm a good fit into this area. And even though I do remember my first 3 months, I don't like to be a project manager. But after that, I realized that this is something which is really for me. So I, started to, climb the career ladder, and comparing, my career in the first, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I technically only worked on a few projects in the beginning, just because of the nature of the project I was involved in. But considering, let's say that today people are doing more, they're doing, number one, multiple projects. They're doing, quick, fast-paced projects as well, either on waterfall, either on agile, or either, having something on a hybrid manner. But what is, I would say, that things are really evolving is that we are expected to run projects quicker, run them faster, more efficiently in terms of resources, or in less cost than before. But I would say that's how it's actually been changing. So, make the long story short, we all start more or less like an accidental PMs. We're doing the job, and then after that, retrospectively, we get a badge as a certification that we are technically competent in this field, and having that commitment towards the career path, let's say.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about certifications. I think people might be also wondering, when you talk about certifications, what are the certifications we're referring to? Are we talking about PMPs, CAPMs, CSMs, PGMPs? There's a lot of
Right.
certifications out there. Which would you recommend for project managers to start with, and how should they align their certification journey?
Right. So my focus area is really around the PMI certifications, the certifications by the Project Management Institute. Why is that? Because technically, the PMI is leading the way on a global scale. So there are countries, there are regions where other certifications or other institutes are providing, let's say, or they are more present on those areas. But in a worldwide scale, PMI reach the objective that they become the worldwide recognized body across the board, across the world, with the certifications they provide. Now, PMI provides us different certifications for your different level of experience. Now, the first one is very much the CAPM, which is technically only required that you are educated towards project management. So it's only required a set of training, whereas the PMP is technically where I would say the second biggest milestone is, because the first one is the CAPM. But the second biggest milestone is to make sure that you have the PMP, which requires work experience, a minimum of 3 years, if you have a bachelor degree. And once you've done that, technically you are good to go for the next 5 years, unless you would like to specialize in certain areas. And that's where I would say, if you have to, your organization or your career path is more in line with agile practices, for example, you can go into a route to be more competent in Scrum, or more competent in agile methodologies. You can take the PMI ACP, or you can go even more hardcore on agile, going into the scaled agile framework area. And or you can take the route for being more competent in risk management or business analysis, or you further progressing with your project career and become a program manager. There's also a certification for those people. But again, I would say there is no one size fits all. But in terms of these career stages, if you, let's say, you are committed to become a project manager, but you not have the relevant experience, you better get your CAPM first. That will help you to, it will enable you to find your first project manager role. Then after 3 years, you are progressing further, get your PMP. And after that, I would say you can decide. And the reason why I'm saying is you can decide, because the first 2 steps is straightforward. But after that, you will see, because in terms of the industry, I mean, if you are in construction, most likely you not have too much use of an agile certificate, whereas maybe risk management or business analysis, that you have a better use of that in the long term. Whereas if you are in an IT industry, in software development area, obviously getting a badge of SCM, the Certified Scrum Master, for example, or the Agile certificate by PMI will add lots of good skills under your belt.
Right. I think I can add a bit of pointers here as well. So when we talk about certification, if you take my journey, I started off doing my CAPM to start with. I wanted to actually know what project managers professionally do. That was, let's say, a 5 month journey for me. I had
Wow.
5 months of prep time. I wanted to find the ins and outs of project management, prepare myself to clear that examination. I still remember it was based out of PMBOK sixth edition. Now the latest one is the seventh edition, I believe, with a lot of agile concepts incorporated. But then the sixth edition is what I took my exams, and then the journey started from then on. I started realizing how project managers operated from an industry standard, and that was extremely important because different companies have different ways of working, but then the industry standard is something everyone can speak to. That's a common language. It's a common project management language. I think that is something that I picked out of a CAPM certification. From then on, since I was more closely aligned to software, my career basically started off as a software developer. From then on, I moved into the project management space. So Agile was something that was of interest and was of need for me. So I picked up a CSM certification, where it was more on how sprints were run, how Scrum is run, what do we do as a Scrum Master, and roles like that. And from then on, I think when I started closely working with the product managers, I also picked up CSPO on the way. So what I would suggest for the listeners listening to this conversation is that, like Gabor mentioned, it's not one size that fits all. So everyone, based on their own experience, will move into different career paths down the line based on the companies that they work for, based on the industries that they contribute to. So over a period of time, you will figure that out automatically. But then CAPM, I think we all can agree, is a great place to start, because that's exactly where you start learning project management language, right? A lot of times when we talk to the leadership, when we are recognized as a project manager, that's also because of the language that we tend to use. We don't talk technically, we talk from a project management standpoint that the leaders can understand, they can make decisions based on that. So I think that certification is a good place to start off for people who are just starting out their career as project managers. But then over a period of time, like Gabor mentioned, a PMP is something that we might aspire for. Depending on your industry, you might go for a different certification as well. Business analyst, that's a different course as well. We have is that a PBA?
Yeah, professional business analyst. I think that's how they're calling it, the certificate itself. Yeah.
Right, and I think there is a few other certifications from scrum.org, PSMs, and henceforth. So there are a lot of certifications out there. But on the same note, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. So we've now got a certification, right? And we are ready. We've got a CAPM certificate. We are ready now to apply for a job. How does adding a certification, a badge there in my resume, translate into getting me an opportunity to sit for an interview? How do I compare to someone who do not have a certification but still hold a relevant experience? How do the interviewers view the certification as something that they can rely on? What are your thoughts on that, Gabor?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's where the your feedback on speaking the common language really coming into play, because that's where you see that the CAPM and a PMP has this global recognition, that technically the reason why is widely accepted everywhere in the world, doesn't matter which country or which region you are, because everybody knows what to expect from a CAPM/the PMP. And more companies now, they started to recognize that if they get, or if they hire a CAPM or a PMP, they get someone who's educated already. So from the company perspective, in terms of the learning curve, they're saving some time. So they're saving lots of time. They're getting, let's say, smart people who understand project management, whom are motivated in project management. So it's not like, I mean, the internal job rotation, moving one person to another, and then here I end up, a project manager who never wanted to become one, but will stay here for the next 2 years because of that job rotation, which is ongoing within the company policy, for example. So I would say that the recognition part is where people speak in the same language. They know what to expect from those those certified people, and and amongst the other available options, so for example, the Google certificate. Now, for example, Google certificate is super popular. Lots of people doing it, but still in terms of the value proposition, the CAPM is 10 times more valuable than the Google certificate. And the main reason for that, because not because Google is not doing a thorough job to putting those courses together, but technically the Google course is only teaching you how Google running projects and mainly the PMI framework, which is, and what you're going to get on return. They're teaching it longer. They're teaching it on a way that is very, very high level and is not as recognized as the CAPM. So I would say that whoever would like to, go with whatever certification. And so I'm not here to, making a recommendation to anyone, but you need to do a little bit of research that, where you would like to be in the next 3 to 5 years. And you need to make, let's say, a call that which direction you should go, because the key differentiator between the CAPM and the PMP is only the relevant project management experience. Now, what does that supposed to mean? Do you need to be a CAPM first, then to become a PMP? Or let's say you have 3 years of experience and you can go straight to the PMP. Now, the answer will be is a yes. So it's not a necessary step, someone with the right level of experience, project management experience, to get the CAPM first, then the PMP. You can technically go and skip the CAPM route and go to the PMP right after.
So 3,500 hours of experience. And when we talk about experience, are we talking about project management experience here?
Right. So what PMI said you should have is if towards the PMP, that's 36 months of leading project management experience, which means that you not necessarily need to be labeled as a project manager just to even apply, but you should perform project management related activities or tasks. So for example, if somebody is coming from or having experience in software development, now if that person was, let's say, a Scrum Master, now Scrum Master was involved in planning, some Scrum Master was involved in delivering a project, for example. So in that sense, you are able to book time against those experiences, which will count towards the PMP. Obviously, you cannot do a copy-paste comparing with someone like a construction project manager who technically all of his time is a copy-paste in terms of the experience required towards the PMP. So either way will work, but where I see people misinterpreting the experience is not just simply work experience. You need to have leading project management experience. That's the key differentiator.
That makes sense. So let's say I am involved in teaching project management to students.
Yeah.
Should that be considered as an experience?
Teaching was technically also a project activity, because once you teach, you plan it, you're done, you might do another teaching. So technically that experience will also count towards the PMP.
Right. And I might have to provide all these experience as proofs to PMI when I register for this exam. Am I right, Gabor?
Yeah, that is correct. So when you submit your application, you need to actually input a short outliner that what did you do? How does this contributing from the experience? How does this contributing towards the PMP? And each experience, you need to add the contact person, because in case of an audit, PMI will contact those people and just would like to ask that, are they also okay what you write down there? Because, in the end of the day, PMI is not a police department, but they wanted to make sure that you have relevant experience towards the PMP, because they really would like to make sure that the high quality and high integrity of that certificate itself.
Right. They'd like to maintain the standards of the PMP certificate. On the same note, I wanted to talk to you about one more point. There have been, I see a lot of, companies or consulting firms, giving away a 5-day course or a 6-day course for a PMP certificate. I want to hear your thoughts on doing a short duration course like that and preparing for a PMP. Would you advise that?
Right. So to answering that question, so the current exam, also PMP and also CAPM, they are no longer based upon the latest PEM book out there. So PMP is based upon 3 different books currently as a basic material from PMI recommendation. CAPM is based upon 4 different materials. So technically, we talk about multiple materials which needs to be covered towards both exams. So that would say that's point number 1. Now, point number 2 in terms of the duration. So most people spend between 4 to 6 months in terms of the preparation. Now, there can be multiple reasons how we end up here. But what I can definitely tell you that nor CAPM or PMP is a weight loss program. So you should prepare quicker, faster, easier. Now, I would say easier, not because that the content is, we can simplify the content on some extent, but it's more about how we understanding the information what we need. And that's where, for example, a bootcamp is coming into play. Now, let's take a person, let's call him Marcus. Marcus is, having 4 years of experience working in an IT department and he's a project manager. Now, Marcus has like 4 years experience, so have an understanding about how projects to run. Now, if Marcus will go into a 5 days bootcamp, he most likely will be very much overwhelmed to hear everything first time, crammed into 5 days. So I would say after 2 days, you felt like that this is just a little bit too much. I mean, just simply, going with the pace of the instructor going to one module over the other one, sometimes even very little explanation because we don't have too much time. We have only 5 days to cover all this. That means that there is some gap and there are some question marks. And then the conclusion for Marcus will be that he might need, I would say, at least 3 months to prepare. And then after that, Marcus will either opt for a preparation book, which was recommended by the bootcamp, or he might going to go with an online course in this case. So I would say that bootcamps are great, but the most benefit you're going to get out of bootcamp, if you are already prepared on some extent, which means that if you are, let's say, 2 weeks away from sitting on the exam, you already hear this, you already went through this. In that case, the bootcamp will be really in your favor because within a short period of time, you go through everything end to end from beginning to an end. So you're going to see the benefits. But if you hear this first time, you're not even started any preparation, it might come as a shocker to you. And that will ultimately increase your duration, and that's why you see the examples where people are preparing 4 to 6 months towards the exam preparation.
And guys, I'll tell you one thing: this exam is not as easy as it sounds as well. There's a lot of work that needs to be put in. I think the right preparation is the key for a success with respect to PMP or CAPM. This is also no means to scare you, and making you refrain from not doing this course. This is absolutely a valuable course, and this is something that you should be picking up. But I think the right way to go about, there are a lot of instructors out there who help you with this particular journey. And we have with us one excellent instructor in Gabor. I'd like to understand from Gabor, from the man himself, because I've heard this from a lot of project managers about how Gabor has helped them in through this PMP journey. But I want to hear it from Gabor. What's your secret sauce? How do you help your cohorts prepare for the PMP journey? And can you talk to us about a couple of success stories? That'll be inspirational for our listeners.
Sure. So my secret sauce is the 8 weeks preparation towards CAPM and pre-MP. So even let's say if you decide today, and then 8 weeks should be plenty enough to prepare for the exam. Now, why is that? And that's what I keep telling to everyone, because PMP or CAPM prep is not a weight loss program. You're going to see results right away. And that's the most of the time which put a little smile on people's face as well as soon as they hear this phrase. But I would say that the reason how I come up with this 8 weeks study plan is and preparation was mainly through my experience, because I was a long-standing exam taker. I started my journey as CAPM, but failed, waited enough time to go to the PMP, and then failed the PMP once, failed the PMP twice, only passed the third time. So for me, this was almost like a journey of 3 years to get the PMP, in between couple of long breaks, because I was a little bit embarrassed by not passing, especially if you're going with your colleagues and they all passing but not you. So the conclusion was that I tried this in many different variations, from boot camps to trainings to books to courses to instructors. And I think the challenge I faced, that I always had this real life experience in my mind and how real life project success should look like, or in at least the terms of the company I worked for. And I wasn't able to kind of connect the dots, that how does this link into the best practice? Because many times I wasn't really happy with the best practice, how the best practice would like to see things. And I realized, I think for the third attempt, that I need to do this differently. Otherwise, I will get the same results. Because what did I do before? I went to a boot camp, I read the book, I started to do questions. I was actually performing one day very well, next day wasn't really well. So that was one sign, which wasn't really consistent. But I thought that I need to do something different. Now, and the difference came into my mind, that instead of me approaching the CAPM or the PMP, that I try to learn as much as I can, I realized that I need to focus on understanding what is the PMI logic behind the processes, behind waterfall, behind adaptive, behind hybrid, behind agile, understanding why they working the way they working. And that was actually been the mind-blowing experience, because I prepared within 8 weeks. It was way much more easier. It was way much more easier to comprehend, because the approach beforehand was really, I wanted to learn as much as I can, but I did not realize I'm trying to become a professor here, the professor of who should know everything about everything. But the exam is slightly different, because the exam is all about situational questions in terms of the PMP. And we started to see more of those on CAPM as well, by the way. So PMP situational questions, but you need to answer it how the best practice is working, now how you do it in real life. And that's why I would say it was completely different and difficult, because you need to be prepared, because for the 180 questions, 230 minutes, it might sound a lot, but 1 minute and 20 seconds something is not a lot of time, which means that is equally mentally tiring, and also is a test of your will, the test of your understanding and your adaptation to the mindset.
Yeah, for someone who's not been taking tests very recently, the day after I completed my certification, I felt a huge sigh of relief after writing that test. First thing was my back pain, 3.5 hours, 3 hours sitting together for an exam, which was mentally draining, like you mentioned. That's not going to be an easy task. But then I think these are the kind of preparation that can help you. An 8-week preparation by Gabor. There's been a lot of success stories out of that. And he has shared with us just now his own experience. I think one thing that I realized from his journey is that he's failed multiple times while trying to pass this exam. But then what that has brought to him is more experience and more ways to look at the syllabus in itself. The depths that he wanted to go into. We talk about agile, hybrid, waterfall, all these frameworks. The amount of depth that we'd like to go into these concepts, I think that would be a revelation as well. And I think that is what has helped Gabor through this journey. So if you are someone who's taken up the PMP once, you've not been successful, twice, not been successful, there is a live example here in our show in Agile Amplified, Gabor, who's taken it thrice, not just once, twice, but then thrice, and managed to pass it, and not just stay there, but also made it his passion, made it his goal to teach others how to pass this exam within a stipulated period of time. Now he runs an 8-week course, a very successful course as well. And he's got close to 18K followers in LinkedIn, following him for project management tips and content. He runs a newsletter, like I mentioned, Agile Admiral. And I've been a fan of Agile Admiral for a while now. There's been a lot of content. Trust me, your newsletter is content pumped. By that, what I mean is, if you take that canvas, there's a lot of content out there for anyone to consume. So those are the things that I think would help project managers during their initial journey, or anyone who's taking the PMP exam, because a lot of content out there are relevant to what is out there in the exam as well, right? Because like you mentioned, it's all situational based. So you might have to not look at it from an exam perspective, but also from an experience standpoint. Because without experience, you would not be able to answer those situational based questions. And that is the whole reason why PMI has stipulated a 3,500 hours of experience, managing projects. I think with that, we also come towards the end of this particular episode. It was a pleasure talking to Gabor. Thank you so much, Gabor, for accepting the invite and being part of this show, episode 8 of Agile Amplified, which is very focused on clearing PMP or any of the PMI examinations, and how do we build a career path from then on. Your insights were extremely helpful for me as well as the listeners. I hope our listeners will benefit hugely out of this. Thank you for taking the time out and being part of this show.
Thank you for having me. Maybe can I have a final thought in terms of how I see project management is defined?
Absolutely.
So consider this. If you have $100,000 project, you need to have a project manager. But you also, if you have $100 million project, you also need a project manager. Now, what's the difference between these two guys here? Only the amount of experience, which means that the career path in project management is not linear. You're going to be in different roles. And there are many examples to that. You can, there can be ups and downs, maybe more complex or less complex, or different roles from PMO to program management to Agile to Scrum to portfolio, or even, working with the strategy. But that's the career path where the more experience you have, the more reward you're going to get in terms of those impactful projects which you can deliver. Because really the difference between one person over the other one is only the level of experience. And that's why I would say that the project management career path is something which is not linear, but also very rewarding on the long term.
Absolutely. That's a rewarding career path, and there is no second thoughts about it. I know it's a rewarding career path because I am passionate about what I do. And I know a lot of project managers out there who are listening to this talk and the podcast are the same way. And these kind of conversation is what helps them, helps us become a better version of ourselves and do the job to the best of our capability. Thank you so much, Gabor, once again for being on the show. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.